you're incentivized to do something, the other person is incentivized to do something else because of their role, because of the kind of people they
Mm.
speak to. Even though you're on the same side, you find yourself butting heads because you don't feel understood. The other person feels like you're optimizing for something that is not necessary. You also feel like they're being unreasonable because what you're optimizing for is something that is quote unquote important.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Pulse of Tech podcast, where we have insightful conversations about building digital products, brands, and teams, as well as exploring the challenges in the tech industry. This is Lady Adeni. I'm your host, and I'm super excited that you're here again. This is going to be our third episode. And in today's episode, we have a very special guest joining us. His name is Olushola Karokatose, a very experienced software engineer and is currently technical lead at Paystack. So the topic for today is the non-technical parts of a technical career. Olushola is going to share his personal experience, his perspectives, and he's also going to be sharing some wisdom, from effective communication and leadership skills to the significance of empathy and understanding, which is very useful if you are a technical person or you currently work with technical people. Olushola, thanks for agreeing to do this. We are excited to have you on the show, and I guess we'll just get right into it. Can you please start by sharing a bit about your background and how you got started as a software engineer?
Yes, certainly. Thank you very much for having me to Luwa Walidi. Um, so how I got started in tech. Like funny story, I actually have a bachelor's in zoology. I have a BSc in zoology from Obafemi Awolowo University.
Interesting.
Um, yeah, very interesting actually. I started writing code in my second year, and like a lot of pretty much all federal universities in Nigeria, we tend to experience strikes somewhere in between.
Mm-hmm.
So we had a strike in 2013. I was in my second year then, and I, like we were home for a while, and then I was staying with my cousins, and then my uncle was getting quite tired of having us at home. So
Hmm.
he decided we just needed to do something. Like we just needed to get out of the house somehow. So they attend Daystar, and at the time, Daystar was having something called DSAP. I don't know if they still do it, but it's a short form for Daystar Skill Acquisition Program. So he just went through the entire list, told us to pick any topic or any course we're interested in. It was a 2-week program, and yeah, he'll pay, and then we could just go to that. I think it was for like a week or two. I don't remember. Yeah, it was for 2 weeks. So I went through the list. I saw software engineering. I'm like, fantastic. No, it wasn't software engineering. It was web design. I said, like
Mm.
I've always been interested in techie things. I'm like, this is a good opportunity to explore my curiosity. So I picked web design. And then after the web design training, I got very fascinated at the time. I don't know if you used the software, but at the time it was Dreamweaver.
Dreamweaver, yo.
Yes, it was
Mm.
it was Dreamweaver. It was very exciting for me to like just envision something and then do like drag and drop with Dreamweaver and then you know bring it out to life. So that's what I did. Um, but then I got really excited about it and I just continued learning. I remember sending an email to the instructor back then that like I was trying to make my website look a lot better than what he had taught us. And then he for the first time he mentioned the word CSS. And I'm like, what is CSS? So I started Googling because I told him, oh, I wanted to do this and this and this kind of customization. And he was like, I will not be able to do that with Dreamweaver if I don't know how to write CSS. Like I need to go to the editor, and then I started exploring what CSS, and then I got into like even raw HTML, and then that's kind of how I got started. and then I got into WordPress, and then I got into PHP, and then I just kept going and I kept going. I did a little bit of Java as well. Tried my hands on mobile. I did not do too much. And then yeah, then I decided at some point, I know what, I just want to be a backend engineer. I don't Vue.js, I done some React Native, just like dabbling into a lot of things. And then I decided, yeah, I just wanted to be a backend engineer. So I dropped everything front end and I just stuck to backend development. A lot of freelance projects here and there. And then, yeah, long story short, I joined Paystack in 2019. And yeah, I still work at Paystack as a technical lead.
That's so interesting. So before we even continue, I actually have a very similar story, and it's really funny the way you were saying it. It was like, man, I can really relate to this. I think it was 2014. I went to my brother's church, the Elevation Church in, I think, Ikate Elegushi here, in Lagos, and they had this Teens Nation program, and they were, going to learn some skills, and I decided to just join. And just like you said, I saw web design there, and I was like, oh, let me try web design.
No
And
way.
I swear, and as I was learning, it was that same Dreamweaver that I learned. This was 2014, before I even started coding, because I started coding in 2015. But it was that Dreamweaver that I used, and I learned it, and everything was interesting. But I was like, okay, my next question was like, how do I put this thing online, and everybody should be able to see it? How do I edit this? How do I make this thing finer? You know, and I think that's how it also started for me. And I don't really talk about this part a lot, which is so funny. Like the way you said it just triggered memory in my head. It's so interesting. It was
Yeah.
it was, it
And
was
it's interesting that like
Dreamweaver
yours, yeah, interesting that you actually even all started in church.
in church. Exactly.
Do
It
you
was it
guess?
was Dreamweaver. I guess the only difference is I was studying IT in school. I
Oh,
think
right.
in 2014, I think that was 300 level or so. But I at that point in my life, I wasn't sure I wanted to do anything tech related. But I was studying IT. I was not really enjoying it as much as I thought I would. And because in school it wasn't really practical, it was mostly theory, and the whole web development and front end, back end didn't really come in until like much later. So yeah, it was actually church. which is
Yeah.
which it's so interesting. Hmm.
Yes, it's actually super interesting.
Yeah. So let's so still on your background, right? Since the topic is technical people, some people call us nerds, some people call us geeks. I'm honestly not sure what the difference is at this point, but yeah, there's a lot of nuances, right? And people find it difficult to communicate with technical people, and technical people also find it difficult to communicate with non-technical people, especially when it comes to talking about technical problems specifically, or bugs, or communicating timelines, or just communicating what they did technically. How have you been able to balance that in your career? Like, how have you been able to balance your technical expertise and your soft skills during the course of your career?
Yeah. Yeah, see, it's actually it's quite interesting. I feel like there are a lot of parts to it. Um, I think, I think like foundationally, it kind of goes back to how I even got into software in the first place, and like how my experience has kind of just grown. So I mean, like differently from the person that went to uni, maybe study computer science and they got into coding and then just to experience their curiosity from there, or somebody that took a boot camp or had like some sort of curated journey. Like my journey was all over the place. Like I was just learning a lot of things on the fly. I remember at the time I was taking a lot of stuff from the New Boston. I don't know if you know the New Boston. Boston, say it was a website
Hmm.
back then by Bucky Roberts. Yeah,
Hmm.
I think he went on
I
to
don't
work
know
at
it.
Google. Oh, Bucky Roberts built the new Boston.com, and he basically will go learn like a new programming language or a new technical concept, and he will come and teach you for free. And he will upload like videos explaining it and teaching it on his website. The website was called the new Boston.com. I'm one of my friends that was studying computer science back then introduced me to it, and I was very excited. So I was just learning it. I mean, there was pretty much nothing you couldn't learn on the new Boston.com. So I was
Hmm.
just learning a lot of things like learning and jumping, trying many things. Um, so so I would say that the part of the things that has helped me navigate the non-technical bits of my technical career has kind of come from the fact that somewhere in my mind, like I've always thought about like being able to build software, being able to write code as a means to an end and not an end in itself. And I explain.
Hmm.
So by that I mean, like when I think about coding, it doesn't stop at writing the code in my head. It stops at solving the problem. Um, and I don't think you can solve the problem without understanding the person you're trying to solve the problem for and the
Hmm.
people that you're working with, like the stakeholders, you know. Um, and so I would say the biggest thing that has really helped me navigate my technical career from a non-technical point of view has been communication. Right. Like just and communication not necessarily being able to explain the technical concepts, to a technical person, even though that's included, is mostly being able to carry everybody along. Right. And it's interesting to say that because I remember my interview at Paystack when I did my technical interview and all that. Um, the the person that did the final review on my application is the current CCO at Brass, Emmanuel Okeke.
Hmm.
And the only feedback he had for me then was that my documentation was not good. So it's interesting that I went from being that person to like the person that's not talking about being able to navigate the non-technical bits of a technical career. But I'll say the most important thing is just being able to communicate like what it is exactly that you're doing in simple terms, like in layman language. I think it counts for a lot. And I think it's something that doesn't get spoken about enough in
Yeah.
technical circles. It feels like we just get very deep into, oh, go and learn PHP. Have you used Laravel? Have you used Node.js? There's this new shiny
Yeah.
framework. It has like certain performance improvements over this other language. Oh, have you used
Hmm.
Rust? Have you written Golang?
Yeah. Quick.
And even those things
All of them.
exactly, they're very quick. Like it's easy for us technical people to just start to geek out and be very excited about new technology, but we need to realize that we're not writing our software in limbo. Like our software is not going to be in space, right? Like usually, more times than not, you're writing code, your software is solving a real life problem that is usually a business problem, right? Depending on where you work. Like for example, I work at Paystack. My code, I'm not just writing software, right? The people that use Paystack and use the services that are built and that built and currently maintained do not necessarily care about the technologies powering the software. What they care about is that it works and that it works optimally enough, right? And so, of course, we still need to dump that down to the technology that we use and some of the design choices that we make because those things are important. But if we think about the end user in mind, it really helps us work with all the other stakeholders because you will not only be working with developers and product managers and developers still have like this running beef where there's still there's I don't think I spoke to anybody in any company that has not had beef with engineers or engineers that don't have beef with product managers.
Yeah.
But I think one of the things that really helps is being able to communicate what you're doing in simple enough language that non-technical people understand, right? Like people in sales understand what you're saying. Like we're trying to
Mm-hmm.
build this feature. Okay, so how does this feature that we're trying to like where exactly are we? How how exactly is this thing going to work? How do I carry everybody along in a safe enough way? Like, and it usually shines through in my experience. That communication has kind of shown through when there have been downtimes. Like when something has gone wrong and I have had to come explain to people in the company at Paystack like why this downtime happened, like what exactly happened and what we did to solve the problem. Um, yeah, like what I found, like there's this joke that I have with my guys that like for the technical people that come to the all hands calls. So during our all hands, we generally will talk about, oh, in the last 1 week, did any significant downtime happen? And if there was a downtime that happened, somebody responsible on the team has to come give an update about what happened. It's not pointing fingers, but we just want to everybody just needs to know what's going on, right? And there's this running joke that we have that the engineers that give updates and don't get any questions are the people that share the updates in such a way that people don't understand what they are saying. So,
Yeah. Yeah, yeah,
and
yeah, yeah,
so,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah, and so people don't want to. I mean, it's not all the time, but more times than not, like sometimes we intentionally and unintentionally obfuscate the information, and the average person does not get what you're saying, so they're not going to put up their hands in front of 200 people and ask a stupid question, so they'll just be quiet.
Yeah,
Do you
yeah.
understand? Oh yeah, that's good. Everybody just moves on. If they have questions, they'll come and text you. But I've actually found that when I give updates, people tend to ask me questions like on the call, and then I'm like, I know, yeah, I understand, I may mess up. Now me
Yeah.
go they explain, because now they're asking you lots of questions because they actually understand what you're saying. Like it makes sense to
Mm-hmm.
the average Joe. And truth be told, when you think about progressing in your technical career, like if you're not, well, depending on where you work, in my personal experience, as somebody that is building products, like as a product engineer, not somebody that's working at Google, maybe building internal tools, um, you're going to have to carry every other person in the company along, especially not technical people along. And
100%.
yeah, and if you find yourself consistently struggling to communicate or, you know, like they don't get what you're saying, every time there's a downtime, it just feels like you're saying gibberish. Truth be told, it gets to a point where people start to lose trust in you and what you're doing. Because generally, people don't like to feel stupid. After a while, they start to feel like this person is consciously making this thing difficult for us to understand because they're trying to cover gist,
Mm-hmm.
right? They're consciously trying to make sure I don't understand so that they can just continue to be the person handling it. And sadly, I found that most of the engineers that work are very introverted. They don't speak too much. They just want to build stuff. And that's
Yeah.
our excuse. Like I'm introverted. I don't
Let me just build and be going to my
let me just build
house.
and be going to my house. Do you
Like,
get?
don't
Um
stress me with all these plenty,
you don't
plenty English and questions. Like,
exactly.
yeah.
Is live, is done. Approve my PR, review my PR. We have all our technical gist. Don't talk to me, just
Yo,
free.
that
Um
PR thing, like, I've raised my PR. Bye bye. And
exactly, bye bye.
that's the end. That's the
Do
end
you
of the
get?
story.
you know, you find that depending on what your long-term career goals are, you just might end up struggling to grow if you don't do very well to master the non-technical bits in your technical journey. Like, yes, of course, it starts with the foundation of technical competence, right? That's probably what got you hired in the first place. You're a very sound
Mhm.
engineer. You can think through problems very clearly. You can write very high quality code very fast, right? Um, you own systems. You can review things in person, all that. But as you start to go, like as you start to grow, as you start to become more and more responsible for systems, like you find that you're doing a lot of your coding less and you're coordinating, managing expectations more. And if you do not take if like this soft skills very importantly, you start to struggle because now you're not incentivized or like nobody is going to be the expectations that people have of you or management has of you is not necessarily to write high quality code anymore. It
Yeah.
is to coordinate your team. It is to manage the system. It's to make sure that there's uptime. It's to be able to work with your engineering team, manage your engineering team, set technical direction, and things like that. And if you're the type that has not exercised some of those muscles, you'll struggle. Granted, there's some companies that incentivize engineers to not speak too much. They're probably senior engineers that remain on senior engineer or on software engineer or staff engineer, things like that, and they don't have to do a lot of the liaising, communicating, and all of that.
Mm-hmm.
They're stuck with just solving problems.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're the type of person that wants to do other things, maybe you want to become a CTO, you want to become VP of engineering, you want to grow, right? It's like do something like you want to grow vertically in your software engineering journey. At some point, you definitely need to start to learn how to speak the language of non-technical people, right? Um,
100%.
yeah,
I don't think it's something you can avoid if you want to grow into those leadership roles. I mean, basically, from what I've seen, based on experience, it's usually two options you have. You grow your leadership and soft skills, and you grow into more managerial roles, which is like what most people think about, vertically. But if you don't have the leadership skills, you don't have the communication skills, but you're still a really good engineer, I mean, you would usually just be promoted to like senior software engineer, your salary increases, but they don't give you a leadership position. But then again, I feel like there's a limit to how much you can grow in a situation like that. Sometimes the highest salary is reserved for the managers, right?
yep,
The technical people can only get so far. I mean, you're a really good engineer, but you're not the best team player. You know that gag a couple of years ago where there was a meme everywhere that people were shouting, "Yo, 10x engineer, 10x engineer."
mm-hmm.
Yeah, something like that. There's there's like a limit, right? If you want to break that ceiling, and eventually as you get older, you would still have to somehow you still have to manage people, you still have to communicate, no matter how much you run from it, no matter how much you feel like
Yes,
you don't like people, or product managers are always stressing you like how far, what's up with this work, yeah,
mm-hmm.
I just wanted to point that out also.
Yeah. To even add to that, the truth is, even like as you get more and more experienced, even if you never explicitly become a leader, like you do not get promoted to technical lead, or you do not get promoted to like you're not given a leadership title, unconsciously people start to regard you as a leader with the more experience that you have in whatever domain, right? You've been at a company for 5 years. You built out like a
Yeah.
particular stack. Even if you never become technical lead or staff engineer or whatnot or engineering manager, because you have the most experience,
Mm-hmm.
people would unconsciously start to defer to you. Like people will
Facts.
unconsciously start to lean to you for guidance. Like people start to need your feedback or request your feedback before major technical decisions are made. If you struggle to communicate clearly, if you struggle to work with people, like you're just the geek, you're just the nerd,
Mm-hmm.
you're just very excited about tech alone, it will start to bite you even in your senior software engineer role. Because even though those expectations were not explicitly stated, they are now implied because of
Yeah.
where you are. And yeah, so I
Yeah,
think it's important.
100%. 100%. 100%. Hmm. Okay. So, based on what we just said, we just talked about how important it is to grow these soft skills on communication, collaboration, being a team player, and working with others. I guess my next question would be, how do you think engineers can grow their ability to effectively communicate with non-technical people, like product managers, product designers, salespeople? How do you think they can grow that their ability to communicate more effectively.
Yeah. To be honest, that can be quite tough
Yeah.
because it also depends on the person you're speaking to. Some people are easier to talk to than other people. Um, but in my personal experience, at Paystack, which I have spent the longest time working at in any compared to any other company I've ever worked at or anybody I've worked with the same people for the longest amount of time at Paystack. I would say that like it starts with like a genuine curiosity. Like I really want this person to see my point of view,
Mm,
right? I want to understand this person and I want this person to understand me as well. Like I want to understand this person and I want to be understood as well. Like I want us to come to some sort of agreement. Like yeah, we need to come to some sort of agreement. And I feel like once you make that step, take that step, you say, you know what? I genuinely want to be able to communicate effectively. Like I want this person to understand me and I don't want to keep spilling technical jargon as far as they're concerned. Like they don't what is Redis? Oga, is it working? Abi it's not working. um I think after that, the next thing that I would say is very important for a lot of people to try to figure out is what are the incentives of the other person that you're speaking to, right? Like, what is this person incentivized to do?
yeah.
And you know what? Like, I think for a lot of us, you can automatically assume what the other person's incentives are. But when you think about it and you communicate, like you ask the right questions, you realize that sometimes you have the wrong incentives. Well, maybe not the wrong incentives, you have different incentives, right? You're incentivized to do something, the other person is incentivized to do something else because of their role, because of the kind of people they
Mm,
speak to.
mm,
And even though you're on the same side technically, you find yourself butting heads because you don't feel understood. The other person feels like you're optimizing for something that is not necessary. You also feel like they're being unreasonable because what you're optimizing for is something that is quote unquote important. I mean, I'll give an example. So, I'm trying to think about like an example. So this is an example of like technical to technical now, for example. Um, as a senior software engineer, your incentives tend to be to write high quality code because those are the things that you're going to be judged against. Like, what's
yeah.
the quality of the software that you've written? How quickly did you get the feature out? How well does the feature work? And all of that. So when you're doing your work, you find yourself unconsciously leaning towards ticking those boxes, whether you like it or not. Like you find yourself trying to optimize, write high quality code as much as you can, usually within the domain that you're working at. Like for example, at Paystack, I've generally been in charge of the virtual account bits of Paystack. Like I built out most of the virtual account stack at Paystack. Um, a good example is like Paystack Titan, for example. Um, yeah, as a senior software engineer, when I started working on this like 2 years ago, 3 years ago, um, my incentives were to write high quality code that works, and things like that. And but when you're speaking to a principal engineer, their incentives are slightly different. Their incentives are more broader scope. They're not thinking about your virtual accounts domain. They're thinking about the entire engineering stack at Paystack. They're thinking about the entire engineering domain. And so you might find yourself butting heads with somebody like that. And you're wondering, like, why is this person being so difficult? Right? Like you've written your code works, right? You think this thing is ready to go live. But then this principal engineer is saying, I don't think this is the best possible way to do it, right? And you just think this person is being difficult. But when you start to ask the right questions, you figure out that way this person's incentives are different, right? This person is not just thinking about your shiny new feature. And I'm not, saying that I had this exact same um, issue. This is hypothetical. But you find out that this person is thinking more broader scope. They're thinking about how what you're building is affecting some other team that you're not
Mhm.
thinking about. You probably don't even know what they're working on, right? And then they're telling you to make like slightly different decisions. And you might end up being frustrated and you might just think this is being difficult. But when you
You don't have
actually
the
think
full
about what the
scope.
incentives are, exactly, you realize, oh, okay, I guess where this person is coming from. I guess why they will do this. It's not very different from someone that is non-technical as well. If you think about like somebody in sales, for example, maybe they've made a promise. to a very key merchant, and the key merchant is asking for a feature, and then you say, oh, and then they're talking to you about it, and then you're spelling technical jargon. We need to optimize this, we need to scale up our servers, we need to do this one. They might very conveniently start to find that to be a stressful conversation. But then when you just ask the right questions, like, wait, why are you asking me these questions? Like, what exactly are you working towards? What's your end goal? You realize that the conversations are not as difficult as they seem. Sometimes you even have the answers that they need, right? But because you're thinking about the conversation slightly differently from how they're thinking about it, the conversation will just be tough. So I think it starts from knowing what the other person is working towards. Like, what's this person's goal? Me, I'm a technical person. Consciously and unconsciously, I'm incentivized to be chatting about the technical bits,
Mm-hmm.
right? Or be excited about the technical bits, which is fantastic. Like, that's my job. But for the non-technical person that I'm speaking with, that I have to work with, I need to know what they're working towards. Like, I need to know like what the business is optimizing for. Where's the business heading to? And quite frankly, having that knowledge would help me think about how best to implement the technical features that I'm working on, right? And it kind of that even kind of takes me to technical debt. Like, a lot of us complain about how technical debt is a bad thing. We should be fixing our technical debt, and I fully agree. But hot take, like, sometimes you have to introduce some technical debt because of the incentives of the business, right? It's like you have to communicate clearly that,
100%.
guys, you guys are trying
100%.
to roll this thing. You guys are trying to roll this thing out in so amount of time, but you need to know these are all the ways we can solve this problem. This one is going to take us the shortest amount of time, but it is going to introduce some complications in the long term. Like, we might be able to use this for like a year, but we need to add this to our roadmap, right? Such that
Mm,
at the just before the breaking point, we fix it,
exactly. How do we
right?
cater
And the
for it
system can
down the
continue.
line?
Exactly. And the truth is, you realize that as you start to be that person that leans towards the incentives of other people, it gets easier for you to make a case for your own incentives to be satisfied as well, like for your own desires to be satisfied as well. So if you're the type of person that will come and understand what the business is leaning towards, you know that sometimes they're leaning towards speed. Like, they need the money. This money needs to roll in 2 months. How can I build this thing in such a way that it's going to come in 2 months? Of course, like, the perfect place to be would be to do the perfect thing, build a scalable system that you don't have to come and optimize. But you need to sometimes think about the fact that, like, all the extra things that you're doing, like all the shiny things that you're doing, the design technicalities, might come at a cost to the business that, quite frankly, you do not need to bear at the time
Yeah.
you are doing all the work. You can come back to do some of those things. So when you have some of those conversations, it helps you just rethink your design, and because you know what the business is working towards. You know what the non-technical people are optimizing for. Like, you know what the operations person is optimizing for, what your CEO is optimizing for. You can now say, okay, guys, I've thought about this thing. This is what I can do, right? But we're going to have to put this thing in the roadmap. And then it's now your responsibility to fight for those things to be done. Because, I mean, if you genuinely care about the work that you do, then you don't want to build a system that will not scale. Because, news flash, if you do not advocate for those things to be optimized, by the time it starts to break, they'll blame you again.
Yep.
So, so there needs to be that balance, like that balance of, like, I'm giving you what you want, but I need to consistently remind you that you need to give me back what I want as well, because this thing is not going to work. By the time it gets to this particular point, it's not going to work properly, and we need to fix it at that point. Like, I've even found in my own personal career that I just go and fix it in my own time. Like, I don't even wait for anybody to
Mm-hmm.
add it to their backlog.
Yeah.
Thankfully, I
There's
have
also
I have
that.
it I have exactly, I have a good relationship with, like, the product managers that I work with. So I just talk to the person closest to me and say, guy, I want to work on this thing. Please don't add my name to any task. I don't want to. Do you get? Just give me like 2 days to do this thing. Block off any meetings. Like, don't involve me in any meetings. If anybody's trying to get my attention, try to shield me for the next 2 days, because I really need to fix this thing. And if we don't fix it, we're gonna have problems. I find myself doing that a lot, and it has worked for me. And everybody has been happy. Nobody has to come back to fix some of those problems. Um, and you find that, like, everybody is happy. Of course, like, it's probably not the most convenient to do. You can't do that all the time, but the goal is to genuinely understand what the people you're working with are working towards. Sometimes they also need to understand what you're working towards. It's not every time that I introduce technical debt. It's not, you can't do that all the time. Sometimes you need to fight the fight early on because you know that the technical debt is big enough to it's big enough to warrant an early enough fight. Like it's just just that balance of understand. Like everybody just needs to understand each other and know what we're working towards. And yeah, I think that's a good start.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. My next question was going to be how you think people can manage conflicts within their teams. But I think you've answered that already, which is it's interesting because when designers are learning design, or design thinking, they learn about empathy for users. Same with product managers, but no one really talks about how engineers should have empathy for their users or empathy for one another within the team, right? Empathy is not a word that was coined for only users. It doesn't stop at your users. It extends to your team members, your leaders,
Yes,
your
100%.
subordinates, your team members, your CEO. You have to be thinking like, oh, my team lead right now, what are his goals and how can I help him or her achieve it? Or your team members are writing code, and instead of just blaming them like, yo, this code you wrote doesn't make any sense, like you can think of it in a way that, oh, I see what you were trying to do here, but this is not how you should think. You should think this way when you're facing this kind of particular problem. Helps you build relationships. It helps you build trust in your team members. They
Exactly.
start to trust you. They start to rely on you even more, which can also be stressful because having a bunch of people relying on you can take away from your it can take away from your work sometimes, but it's it's
Yeah.
all it's all a part of the game, to be honest. I mean, I talk to my team members all the time. Sometimes the way they write code can be very single-minded in the sense that they are not writing it thinking somebody is going to edit this in 3 months time, right? what
Hmm. You
what if
name a
I
variable
leave?
X.
Yeah, like, bro, why did you do that? Like, to me personally, I don't mind if your variable name is long, as long as it makes sense and it looks like all the other variable names in the same context of what it's being used at, right?
Yeah.
So it's easy for people that are reviewing your code. Um imagine if you're that team member that everybody in the team is excited to review your code. Imagine how much, you know like, imagine how much good reviews you are getting. Like,
Exactly.
when the team lead or the CTO comes to us, oh, how is this girl or how is this guy doing in the team? Everybody's like, man, this person takes care of the code like it's their baby.
Yes. Person is a
It's
joy to work with. Like it.
she's a joy to work with. It goes a very long way. And I was having the same conversation with someone 2 days ago on ADP lists. Was like a mentorship call, and I basically had to break down how you need to have empathy for your team members and for your leaders, right? And apparently it's not something that is obvious. I mean, to me it's something that's obvious, right? Because I'm naturally an empathetic person. But apparently, it's not something that's obvious. You need to have empathy for
Yeah.
for the people that you work with. You need to actively care about their goals, and like you said,
Yeah.
their incentives. Right? This person is asking you to do this thing. What is that person's incentive for asking you to do that thing? Because to you, based on the context and based on the experience that you have, based on the context that you have, it might not be a reasonable requests and you would push back.
Mm-hmm.
So it's important to have that conversation. So maybe you are right, and your your way of solving that problem is still the best way. But if you don't communicate and have a reasonable and calm conversation with the person, you are not going to get anywhere. And eventually, if something goes wrong, like you said, you're still the one that will get blamed for the whole thing. So
Exactly.
it's
Yeah.
quite an interesting point. And your take on the technical debt too, like I totally agree. Um
Yeah.
at this point, I believe, everything cannot be perfect. At least the first time, you have to
Yeah. Yeah. Like
continue iterating.
yeah, like they'll say, perfect is the enemy of the good.
Yeah,
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 like you need yeah, like get it out there. Let the thing even start working. You find like you're just building, you're not,
yeah,
and to even maybe to add a balance to it, there's also times when you need to fight that quote unquote perfect fight first because you know that the technical debt is not worth taking on. But in the end, like you said, the most important thing is to understand what everybody's incentives are. Like if I understand what you're optimizing for, you understand what I'm optimizing for, then it makes the conversation easy. If I have to disagree with you, at least I'm disagreeing from a point of knowledge. Like I'm not blindly disagreeing with you because I think I'm right. I'm disagreeing with you because I hear you, I understand you, I just don't agree.
hmm,
And we can have a conversation. Like we can do you get and we can make something that one of the things I enjoy the most about working with technical people is that I've not worked with one overly emotional engineer. Not one. Okay, maybe I can think about one.
yeah.
But
I can think
but
of
like
one or
you
two.
don't get yeah, like you don't get to work with like at least like as technical people grow and people that are honest with themselves and honest about their career for most technical people, like a lot of us tend to be very logical. And if you make good enough arguments, most people tend to just drop their take and say, you know what? In my experience anyway, like most of the people I work with will be like, you know what? Yeah, your point is better than my own is fine. Like I get
Yeah,
your point of view. What you're saying
yeah,
makes sense. Do you
yeah.
get like you can have that logical argument. And since you can have that logical argument, you probably should be incentivized to have it. It's like when you disagree, we ask people that work for me, I don't have a problem with disagreeing with you. Like I will understand you, but if I don't agree, I will put my foot down and tell you why I disagree. And it does not always work for me. Sometimes, like I disagree, and somebody higher up says, you know what? Yeah, I hear you. At work they call me Carol. Say, I hear you, Carol, but I think this is what we should do, right? Because of this, and because sometimes it's not right versus wrong. Usually, for technical things, there are usually many rights. The
Yeah.
question now becomes what are the incentives? So yeah.
Yeah, that's super insightful. Let's I just realized we are like 45 minutes in. So we need to start
No,
wrapping up.
already.
Yeah, we're like, it feels like 20 minutes, but it's fine. It's fine. Let's go through some rapid fire questions, and then maybe we'll round up and I'll ask like one final question. Okay,
Okay.
so here goes. Do you prefer dark mode or light mode?
Dark mode
Okay, cool. What's your current phone?
is an iPhone.
Oh, nice, nice. Which one?
Is the 14 Pro Max.
Nice. Pro Max, man. Godwin. Okay. Tea or coffee?
Tea actually.
Really?
Yeah, I'm not a coffee fan, but I drink a lot of tea
Huh.
without milk.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Always without milk. I don't think you should drink
Mm,
tea with milk. Hot steak, sha. But
Yeah,
that's
I
just me.
agree.
Are you a morning or night person?
Um, hmm. I think I've switched. I'm a mix of both now. I used to be a nice person, but I wasn't sleeping well, so I stopped. I forced myself to be a morning person, but I still do work at night. So I'm somewhere in between. It depends on what I need to do.
Hmm. I need tips, I beg. Like I need to be a morning person. I'm still not. So
Oh.
I need to be running on coffee before 9 a.m. or I'm just like my voice is just going to be ridiculously groggy on my morning calls. I'm like, good morning everyone.
It's like Batman is on the team.
I swear. Like like it's so weird how my voice changes from like this regular light-hearted tune, and then in the morning it's just like deep and just groggy, and it sounds like I'm angry, but I'm not. I just don't want
I
to
just
be
woke up.
awake. I don't want to be
Yeah,
awake.
I
Okay.
can relate.
Oh man.
Yeah.
Okay. What's your favorite sport?
My favorite sport is football actually.
Oh, nice. Which team do you support?
I mean, I'm a Chelsea fan. Sadly.
Okay. Say that sadly. Okay.
Yes. So at the time of this recording, sadly,
Okay. Okay. What's your favorite music genre?
is hip hop.
Nice, nice, nice. Would you rather stay at home and chill or go out to hang out with friends?
I'm a homebody. Stay at home all day.
Same, same, same. What's your favorite book right now?
Our favorite book. That's tough. Oh, I don't know about favorite books or favorite book like. But if I think about like the book that has, well, like the book that readily comes to mind anyway, the book that's probably had the most impact on me, it will be The Power of Habits by Charles Duhigg. I read that book a couple years ago, and I've read it a couple times.
Interesting. I think a lot of us like to read self help books on
Yeah,
habits. I mean, I read Atomic Habits last year. I thought it was amazing.
same here. I read it 2 years ago. That was the most amazing book.
It was amazing. It really helped a lot. Okay, final one. Well, this one depends on whether you like comic books and movies. Marvel or DC.
Oh, Marvel, please.
Finally, we have one Marvel fan on the show.
Really?
Yeah.
You've met DC fans?
Yo, this thing shocked me. The last two guys I had on DC and their favorite superhero is Batman.
Superman. No
Batman.
way.
Yeah, Batman.
Boo.
It's fine. It's fine. It's fine. I mean, to each their own.
To
Yeah,
is their own shot. To is their own.
I'm also a Marvel fan. Yeah. So, who's your favorite Marvel hero?
Hmm. I think is Iron Man. I think I'll say it's Iron Man.
Oh,
Yeah.
nice.
But my yeah. But I'll say my favorite Marvel movie is Doctor Strange. So I don't know if he's my favorite, but I really like Iron Man. I think I'll say Iron Man is my favorite. I just really like the Doctor Strange movie, not the
Yeah,
movies.
it was a very good movie. It was a very very good movie. I didn't really
Yeah.
like the last one, Multiverse of Madness.
Oh, Multiverse of Madness. But the first one, I
Yeah,
love. Like I
it
still
was
saw
really
it
good.
like a couple days ago.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, mine is Spider Man. That's always been the old
Sweet, sweet,
Sam
sweet.
Raimi movies are still my favorite. Andrew Garfield as an actor and him playing Spider Man, I think is underrated too.
True. Sure, sure, sure.
So
I
yeah,
agree.
let's get back. So this is we've entered 50 minutes now.
Okay.
So
Okay.
let's talk a bit about some advice and insights. There are some technical professionals out there that want to grow, but they are introverts. They don't really know how to get in people's faces and they believe their work will just speak for them. What's your advice to those people?
Yeah. I think before I even start to give any advice, like I actually want to acknowledge the difficulty that introverts experience in the workplace. Like introverts that are not at like very senior levels experience in the workplace. Introverts that are not decision makers experience. It can be very tough.
Mm.
Um, um, but I genuinely believe that if you really want to, if you really want to, if you really want to grow, but you're going to have to break out of your shell. They're definitely going to have to, and like if it means, like even if it means doing that temporarily, like you have to, you just have to. You need to speak up for yourself. Like your work will not speak for itself. Your work does not have lips. You're the one that does. You're the one that's going to have to give your work a voice. Like people talk about how, oh, but is that not eye service? I genuinely don't think so. Um, I think, I think, um, I think like it can be borderline. People can say, oh, you're just doing eye service, but like eye service is probably not the worst thing if you're actually doing the work, right? But yes, of course, eye service by definition means doing work when only your employer is watching. And of course, like I don't encourage that. Um, but on the flip side, I'm saying your employer has to see the work that you're doing. Of course, you should not be working only when your employer is watching, but your employer has to see the work. You cannot expect your employer to just assume that you're working. And as you know, maybe if you work at a small company or like a small team, you can get away with it. But as you start to work on bigger and bigger teams, like you need to give your work a voice and you need to learn to communicate clearly and effectively. Like you need to let your work speak for itself. Your work has to have receipts, right? It's like you need to have
Yeah,
receipts. Yes,
yeah.
so for the work that you're doing, you need to, and I know how to like. I personally, I'm not the biggest introvert you'll find. I can be quite extroverted, but even I struggle with that. I start to feel like, is this not I service? Like, why do I have to be, you know, like
Yeah,
explicitly stating
it
that
can
I
be
did this
cringy.
work?
It can be very cringy.
It can be,
Mm.
yeah. But I realized, guy, like everybody has different incentives. Like we said earlier, like everybody's working towards different things, and it doesn't make them bad people. Like your manager is probably managing maybe a couple other people as well. Your manager has his own career that he's working towards. He has like his day to day that he has to work towards. If you just expect your manager to see your work without being nudged, you just might be acting in bad faith because
Yeah,
it's tough to do.
yeah.
Right. So you need to actively point your manager in the direction of the work that you're doing. Like your work needs to be clearly documented. And you need to nudge your manager. Of course, it doesn't mean for every work you do, you say CC Oluwawolide. That's stressful. Right. But like your work needs to be visible. Right. And it starts with, of course, doing very high impact work. Like choosing to, choosing the work that you're doing. And for the work that you do, of course, give the work visibility. Document as much as you can, communicate clearly, and routinely point your manager in the direction of the work that you're doing. Because by the time they're having conversations about performance reviews and all of that, like promotions, your manager will remember, right? And even if they will not explicitly remember all the work that you've done, you've created an impression that you're doing good work, and they are incentivized to want to fight for you, or they're incentivized to want to put your name down for a promotion. And because you've already nudged them, it's easy to find references to back up their claim. But if you're a quiet person, your work needs to be very, 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 very impactful for you to level up. And quite frankly, the bigger the team, the more difficult it gets.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, that's my take. My take would be, as much as possible, like start with what's comfortable for you. I remember last year in the new we had a leadership, like a career leadership program, a career program. And after like I spoke on the panel, or one of the panels. And then afterwards, one of our church members, reached out to me. She spoke to me and she said she's actually struggling with putting her work out there and all of that. And like we just had a conversation. I'm like, oh, why do you feel that way? Like, is there anything like when you think about the worst case scenario, what would it be? And she's like, in her mind, she's scared of criticism. She doesn't want people to like she doesn't want to have to deal with a lot of people.
Mm,
Right. And I'm like, but what's the like? And I understand that, because when you put your work out there, you're also inviting criticism and hot takes. But the first thing is this is a controlled environment. If you're not comfortable doing like LinkedIn posts, you can do it in your company. It's a controlled environment first. And then the second thing is like you need to think about what the benefits of doing the work would be. The third thing is the fact that you have to put the work out there as a person that um is a person that doesn't want to be perceived as incompetent or not, thinking the work through. It incentivizes you to put in the work.
yeah,
And yeah, and of course your work will not always be perfect. In fact, like I'm all for putting it out there because you can't. There's nothing wrong with s- looking stupid once in a while. You can't, of course, you can't look stupid all the time, but like there's nothing wrong with having an opinion that people disagree with and they share good healthy feedback on why they can't go that direction, because yeah, not to think in that direction again, and that helps you as opposed to keeping quiet and having that opinion and then
yeah,
allowing that opinion influence your work, and then the work now has problems and then it's now, oh, you're not performing. That's my take.
yeah. That's super helpful. Thank you so much. Let's
Thank you very much,
um,
Tim.
let's start to round up. So let me just go through some action points. One of the big things you said early on was people need to have a mindset shift. So writing code should be seen as a means to an end. Even though you really enjoy it, you enjoy the process of it, but if you're working in a company setting or you are selling your product in one way or the other, it is still the people that would use it that you're building it for. You're solving the problem for them, or you're solving the problem for a business, and by extension, the users of that business. So it's important to
Yeah.
always, think about, you know, the experience of what the users um would feel, right? And you also need to have empathy to understand the incentives for people you're communicating with, which is very important. Technical depth can be good in the context of the business goals at that particular time. You just need to make sure you put it on the roadmap or you fix it yourself later on, depending on how nice you are to your project managers or your product managers. Very important. Very important. Engineers are always fighting with project managers. Front end is always fighting with design. Like, when is this going to when is this going to end? But anyway, for introverts, you just have to give your work a voice, and I really like that line. So yeah, uh, Olushola, thank you so much for coming on the show. Where can people reach out to you?
Oh, yeah. I think people can reach out to me um on LinkedIn actually and on Twitter. My Twitter is private because yeah, I don't like put attention. And I don't really like Twitter can be very can be disturbing.
It is. It is.
Um but more people can reach out to me on LinkedIn. Yeah. I'm usually very accessible on LinkedIn. I tend to respond to people on LinkedIn.
Okay. Okay. This podcast is powered by Dula Studio. Dula Studio is essentially a strategic partner for rapid growing companies in need of product guidance and scalable design systems. So check us out at www.dula.studio. If you want to share feedback on this podcast or submit future episode ideas, you can connect with us at Dula underscore studio on all social media platforms. So that's DULA underscore studio. And if you want to say hi to me personally, you can hit me up at Walede on all social media platforms or Walede underscore. I think I'm Walede underscore on Twitter and Lady Adeni on LinkedIn. So thank you so much for your time, man. This has been amazing. Uh,
Thank you so much to Holiday.
this
I really enjoyed this. It's my first time doing a podcast, and I'm quite excited.
oh really? Yeah, it's
Yeah.
it's been interesting hearing your voice back when it comes out. You'll be like, man, I sound weird. I mean, I always sound weird to myself, and I sound different in every conversation I have, in every recording. So I don't even know if I have one singular voice, but people seem to recognize my voice, but I can't seem to recognize my own voice anyway. So it's fine. All right. Thanks for coming on, man. I really appreciate this. This has been amazing. So have a wonderful day. Peace out. His name is Olushola Karokatose, a very experienced software. Nah, the name is, the name is too dramatic for me not to. Nah, nah, nah. Okay, okay. Let me go again on that one.
Okay.
All right. So advice. So there are some technical professions out there that want to grow. I say technical professions. Okay, I'll cut this part out. Let me just restart. Um, okay,
Take care. Thank you too.
let me stop the recording.